This is Boxes and Briefs, a podcast with real-life business stories. But we will be asking the hard questions and challenging traditions. So broaden your thinking with fresh perspectives and solve problems for business success. Welcome to Boxes and Briefs, another episode. I am Lisa Garrud and this is
Tori.
Today we have with us Joshna Mistry. Welcome, Joshna.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
Okay, well, as you said, Joshna Mistry. I am an owner and a partner and a director and a manager at Gilligan Shepherd, which is an accounting and consulting business. My career has been in the CA environment, so the Chartered Accountancy environment, for the last 20 years.
Wow, you don't look old enough.
Thanks. So 10 of those years I spent at a larger mid-tier firm. And the last 11 years I've spent at Gilligan Shepherd. In both of those organisations I worked in non-leadership and in leadership roles.
Yeah.
And each of those organisations or businesses had very different approaches to culture.
Which is the theme for today, business culture. But what is your why? Why do you do what you do?
I think that I was lucky enough to be born into, love and encouragement and opportunity.
Yeah.
So a family and circumstances that provided that. So my why is pretty simple. I just try and live every day to reach my fullest potential. My ideal day would be just to have a laugh with someone, learn something, and hopefully make someone's day a little bit better.
I love
and make sure that I spend time with the people that I value, and that is making time for my son and my husband every day. Not every day is perfect and goes according to that plan. But you've got to treat every day as a new day, as a new opportunity.
I heard this quote the other day, and it's just like 1% better each day.
Yeah,
That's
I like that, better each day. Yeah.
Okay, so around business culture, which is what we've got you in to talk about today, what's your worst case scenario, most interesting story, something around business culture just to get us going?
I'm going to go with worst case scenario, and I think the worst case scenario for any business is not acknowledging people and culture as the most important aspect, or at least in your top three. I think no matter what your business is, you rely on people in some way. So you've got to respond to their changing needs. I'm going to give a really crude example, and I'm not saying it's exactly the same, but when we have children, we don't then just leave them to figure out how they're going to get their food and figure out how to walk and figure out how to clothe themselves, right? And I think as parents as well, we're always open to new ideas on how to raise our children better.
Yeah.
Even our education system is constantly evolving to try and find better ways to educate.
True.
So I think that in the same way, the requirements that people have of the people they work for within a business environment is constantly changing.
Yeah.
And unless we respond to that, we're not going to get the best out of our people, and we're not going to get the best out of our businesses.
Okay. Yeah. So then on business culture, what is the thing that most people overlook?
I think it is listening.
Right. You can't just say, this is our culture, do it.
Yeah, you've got to respond to what people want. And it doesn't mean providing exactly what they want. It's thinking about why they want this, figuring out if it's a good idea in accordance with your purpose and your goals. And try and make it work in some way if you can. And monitor it. You don't have to do it forever. And just keep communicating on why things are changing or why they're evolving or why you're doing things the way that you are doing them.
It's the old saying, one mouth, two ears.
Yeah.
Listen more than you speak, more than you tell people
Yeah.
what people to do. Listen to what they're asking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's dangerous as well to just be like, hey, everyone else is doing this. We're going to do this now.
True.
Yeah.
Trends.
Yeah. Bloody
Which is actually my
trends.
next question, funny enough. What do you see as the upcoming trends in business cultures?
I think we can all accept that, like, probably over the last 25 years, there's been huge change in every industry in terms of the rate of innovation. And it is accelerating. And I think now things are progressing beyond just doing things faster and better to respond to our clients or our customers. It's about probably even changing what we do and how we do it. And it's responding to the same needs, but it is significantly different mind shift. And this means that the way we've always done things and how we've done things is questioned. And you've got to be open to those questions.
Well, I guess the biggest change with everything that you're talking about, the acceleration and the innovation that's happened, COVID obviously made a lot of people have to work from home, and now that seems to be the biggest requirement of an employee is the flexibility.
Yeah.
So working from home, how do you keep culture when they are not in the office?
Yeah, so I think we went through this exact same thing.
Yeah.
We went through the thing where we must bring everyone back into the office, because how do you create a culture without having people present and together? But I think culture goes beyond, just seeing how people interact physically. Culture is about, creating a culture of excellence, creating a culture where your client is the most important to the business, creating a culture of creativity and innovation. And people require different environments to be able to do that. So I think culture is way more than just getting a group of people together in an office and seeing how they work together. It is making sure that you're creating an environment for those people that enables the business to get to its goals. So it's just a shift, because culture isn't just physical.
No, but what it does mean is if they're all working from home and you're trying to create a culture of excellence, or there is one, to keep that going, you have to increase your communications somehow, some way. So it's making sure that your managers or your leaders are aware of the importance of communicating those important factors, I think. And making sure that if it's not physical and in the office, that is enabled in some way. Many people do it without total flexibility, that people can be wherever they want. It's okay, well, you can do things your way for 3 or 4 days in the week, but we require one day where we get together, and it doesn't have to be a work day. It can just be come into the office, we'll have all our meetings and we'll talk through our successes and failures that day, right? And then which helps
all
with
the
culture.
Stories come out and people learn, because that's I think other than just the physical aspect, what you lose when you lose people being together in the same room is learning. So making sure you create a way for that to happen, at least with, a day of togetherness, or if it has to be Zoom, it's Zoom, but making sure that people do communicate each other so we can learn from each other.
Yeah, just sitting there in the same room and bouncing off each other is just so different.
Even just the water cooler combos.
And maybe not having an agenda. Or having an agenda that's based not so much on the businessy stuff, but on what people are experiencing and what they're seeing.
True.
Boxes and Briefs is proudly brought to you by Gilligan Shepherd, the problem solvers in business.
Joshna, can you describe the culture where you work?
Yep. So Gilligan Shepherd, our culture centres around freedom. Specifically, it's the freedom to be real. And the reason we have that, and it's founder-led, is that we encourage everyone to be authentic. We're a service business dealing with clients, and we want it boiled down to the fact that we're just people dealing with other people.
Yeah.
And aside from that, it also, the freedom to be real fosters creativity, and we value that as well. And so one of our values is the courage to imagine. So we always encourage people to think outside the box, not be scared, and not be moulded into an expectation, really.
Yeah.
And we like the collaborative aspect of the way businesses operate, because we think that you get better results.
Yeah. Better together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so all of that combined should create a culture of making sure we excel as well within those boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the freedom to be real one, does that mean that I can turn up to work having had a terrible night's sleep and swear at people? Because that's me being real. Is that?
Yeah, and that is potentially the negative connotation of freedom. You've always got to balance that with making sure we don't behave appropriately.
Yeah. You're accountable.
You're accountable for your behaviours.
Yeah, because there was this thing, it's kind of this trend on TikTok that I've seen, which talks about if your workplace describes themselves as a family, then that's toxic. It's a red flag. Get out of there. But I think from what I've seen, that yes, you have the freedom to be real, but you have to be accountable for your behaviour, which means it doesn't take it over that toxic line.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So, freedom to be real. I like the positive connotation of family, but I think potentially the trend is to think of families as dysfunctional, and so that gives the whole family culture a bad name.
Yeah.
But it is about making sure we still care about each other like families. Most families do.
Yeah, they go out of their way, right?
Yeah. So, if any of our people are having a difficult time personally or are sick, we make sure we actually look after them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not just say we do, it is actually doing.
Yeah.
Yep.
But then part and parcel of that is making sure that the negative or the dysfunctional aspects of family can also be nipped in the bud when it needs to.
Yeah.
All right, then. Well, who's responsible for setting the culture? Is it the leadership and it filters down, or is it actually something that's organically grown within the employees and leadership recognise it? Like, who does it? Who sets?
Okay. I don't think that culture can be driven bottom up. But in saying that, it is both leadership and the people within the organisation that are responsible for culture. Mm-hmm. Driven by leadership because they have to be open to listening.
Right. So they can influence, but they also have to take note of something's working or changing or...
Yeah, so initial setting of culture will be based on, led by probably the personalities within that leadership, or how the leadership has flowed over time or evolved over time.
Yeah.
But to make sure that we're keeping our people happy and fostering the kind of environment we want, creative, innovative, we've got to be able to listen to our people and respond accordingly as well.
Yeah.
So responsibility lies on both ends, but definitely set by leadership.
So what should leadership look to set? Like, are they just going to go, right, we're going to be funny? Like, what are the ingredients for a good company culture?
I think leadership should first focus on what they feel their purpose is. What's your purpose? Where are you going? What's your vision? Create your strategies and your goals around that, and then figure out, to enable this, we need people to be high performing. So you'd have a different type of culture, or you're driven by high levels of stress. Then you have a different culture where you're like pace setting and you're expecting people to work really hard. Not the on trend thing at the moment, but it is a culture.
So
right?
it's looking at the goal, the purpose, what you're trying to do, and then figuring out what feeds that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just quickly go back to the listening? So like leaders need to be able to listen to their employees and implement action from that. What if the employee doesn't feel comfortable to speak up?
Oh, good question.
Then there's a
problem,
with
right?
How leadership is communicating the culture or dealing with culture.
Yeah.
it is, that part of it is set top down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Being open to listening.
You have to be open to listening, but it doesn't mean you have to do
Yes.
what you're
Okay.
asked. And sometimes that's where the fear is driven by employees. Well, last time I asked for something, I didn't get it.
Yeah.
So that needs to be balanced. So you need to listen as leaders, but you also need to communicate as to the reasons why you are doing something or not doing something.
So then let's say that person who doesn't feel heard or doesn't feel like it's worth saying anything more, they're likely then to become the rotten apple in the team. How do you deal with that person?
You have to have a conversation as soon as you know that there's discontentment.
As soon as there's awareness that something's wrong,
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
avoid it.
Don't avoid it. Yeah, it's like an infection, right?
Yeah.
You let an infection fester and it could potentially become lethal. So
Can you spend
Yeah.
time? Can you spend time trying to manage it though, or is it just like how much time do you give it before you just go,
Yeah.
I've got to get rid of?
you've got to cut your foot off.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
how much energy do you spend on this rotten egg before it's just like,
I think the answer is enough. You've got to call it when you need to.
Yeah.
Often the time is driven by potential that you see in that person. So if you feel like, there's enough good points to devote that time, then you do.
Yeah.
But you've got to set yourself limits.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have heard of also examples where the company has kept paying an employee whilst they look for another job. What do you say to that?
I think it's fine as long as it's not taken advantage of. So often you need to remove someone physically, but your values or the care you have for that person on a personal level or outside of work makes you kind of remove them but still take care of them because you kind of don't want to leave them in a bad spot.
Yeah.
So I think there is merit in doing that and it's fine, but you've just got to, same thing, you've got to call it.
Yeah. So you have to both be on the same page. The rotten apple has to agree that this fit's not working anymore.
Yes.
And still feel helped to find something better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not burning any bridges.
Yeah, you don't want to burn bridges.
No.
And you don't want to ruin your reputation either because if a rotten egg can be rotten outside your house as well. So, can spread,
Rumours, gossip,
yeah.
bad stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. True.
Okay, well, around business culture, we'll finish up with your little golden nugget of advice. What's your best advice on company culture?
I'm just going to take something I heard this week on another podcast. It was a conversation with the CEO of HubSpot, Yamini Rangan. And what she spoke about was treating their people and culture as their second product.
Right.
So just like, you're always reviewing the success of your product, what's going really well and the requests for improvement, you do the same with your people. You
I like
review
that.
what's going really well and you ask for requests for improvement.
Feedback. Yep.
You implement if it's appropriate, and then you keep checking back in. I think they actually published their culture code and they're up to their 100th and something version. So it shows that, a culture is an evolving thing.
Do you know how often you should address it? Culture?
I think it depends on the organisation and how big it is and how much change is happening in that industry.
Yeah.
And what your performance is like, but I would say at least quarterly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
That was great. Thank you so much for joining us. And for our listeners, if you want to reach out to Joshna, you can find her on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for your time, Joshna. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Boxes and Briefs is proudly brought to you by Gilligan Shepherd, the problem solvers in business.